interviews for our new superintendent. We're going to begin, as we do all of our meetings, with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. We are going fully live tonight on DCAT, as this is the last interview, and the general schedule tonight will be that we will complete the interview, we'll take a recess, we will come back and discuss and then vote for the candidate we feel is the right choice for Danvers. We have one item of business to take care of right after that, and then we'll adjourn the meeting. So that's it. We are pleased to have Geoff Bruno with us today. Geoff is the current superintendent of schools in Scarborough, Maine. Yep. And I'm going to let Robin or Alice or both introduce Geoff to the community.
She's going to make me, so. Okay, so this is Geoff Bruno. He's currently the superintendent in Scarborough, Maine. Prior to that, he was a superintendent of schools in Falmouth, Maine. And he is also currently studying for his doctoral degree. So welcome.
Thank you very much.
How this is going to run is you'll have time for an opening statement. There's a total of 10 questions. We each have 2, and then you'll have time for a closing statement. And at any time, we might ask for like a follow-up question to something that you answered. So
very good.
That's how it's going to work. Yeah. So with that, I'm not missing anything, right?
Go right to it.
Thank you very much. Well, just a little bit about my history. So I've spent most of my educational career actually in Massachusetts. First as a teacher, a middle school science teacher and head of school at Community Day Charter Public School in Lawrence, Massachusetts. I then actually went on, we briefly moved to the Worcester area, and I was assistant principal in Hopkinton, Massachusetts. And then back to the North Shore and worked in Georgetown, and then was hired as middle school principal in Belmonte Middle School in Saugus, where I worked and then was elevated to the first district-wide director of curriculum and instruction for Saugus prior to starting to looking for superintendencies. My wife and I had actually gotten married up in Maine, and a couple district opportunities opened up there. Didn't know anybody there, and all of a sudden, the phone calls came in. I went up and interviewed, and next thing, it's, hey kids, we're moving to Maine. And so we moved up to Falmouth, and I was there as superintendent, served as superintendent there for 7 years, which was just an amazing experience. I've got 4 daughters, all 4 kids in the schools, and then took the position I'm currently in Scarborough. Meanwhile, my wife still was working remotely in Newton, and while remote up in Maine, but has subsequently gotten to a point where she's got to start to be in the office a little bit, and we started to reconsider a move back to Massachusetts, which is we moved to Andover, Mass. This past August, and now I'm doing the drive up to Scarborough. But anyway, that's a little bit about my history. I feel like what I've experienced so far today as well. I just wanted to thank everyone who welcomed me to the schools as part of the tours. I was able to visit the high school, middle school, as well as the Smith School and Riverside. The teachers and kids were just amazing. The more that I've had the opportunity now to meet with the administrative staff and the team, as well as teachers and teacher leaders in the district, and it just feels like a great fit for my leadership style. I'm excited to come back to Mass as an educator and an educational leader, and this has just been a great day, and everything that I've learned as part of the original interview process and meeting school committee members as well as the community today. Today was about 18,700 steps. So I got my steps in, which was great. Thank you very much for that too. I got some credit there. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to questions. And our first question comes from Alice Kemp.
Thank you so much for that. I think the first question that I have leads very much into what you were talking about. So after today's walkthrough, how would you describe our school district, and what opportunities and challenges do you think we face?
Well, first of all, just the atmosphere in all the schools was warm, really welcoming. I saw some really innovative teaching. I saw some amazing and very inclusive special education classrooms and teaming of teachers and staff. And the new elementary building, the Smith building, is beautiful for sure. But it's just the people, really. The teaching that I saw and the teachers I was able to connect with and meet were just clearly very professional and great at what they do. The kids were, you could just tell, like it just had that warm community feel. The kids were very open and welcoming and super nice. I'm the president, you know, in a full suit, so that was nice. I got called the president. They locked into the movie, you know, with Bruno, so that's always a hit. So you always get that. And there was actually there's a big painted portrait in the atrium at the middle school. Someone asked if I was the person on, you know, that was. And I'm like, well, okay, all right, that's a new one. I hadn't gotten that one yet. So. So no, I mean I was just really overall impressed just with the staff and the students and the community feel in all the schools. I think there's a lot of opportunities and challenges that are certainly specific to Danvers, but then also resonate in other towns that I've worked in, kind of post-pandemic. Really, you know, we've had such a massive interruption that impacts social emotional learning, that impacts routines for kids and for staff and adults, that we're all trying to get back to. It gets a little better, I think, with each year. I mean, I would say this summer into the fall felt like the first time I was preparing for the opening of school as an educator and not as a public health official, which felt wonderful, frankly. There are still so many challenges that we will continue to struggle with all of our kids, but the opportunities for leadership, and I think some of the innovative practices that teachers and leaders that we've had that the pandemic has brought upon us, just in reacting. How do we teach kids remotely when they're not even in front of us? How do we handle a hybrid schedule? It was like taking an organization and flipping it upside down a couple of times. And I just think that all of us, like teachers and educators and parents and kids, have learned a lot from that, and hopefully will build the resilience to kind of take stock of where we are and then where we want to go as a community heading forward, kind of using some of those new skills, you know, that we learned reacting to the disruption that was the last couple of years.
Great, thank you.
All right, our next question will come from Josh.
All right, Geoff, what metrics would you use to determine the success of a school district? What would you change or improve to make Danvers a top-tier district in Massachusetts?
So there are multiple metrics, I think, that you can use to assess how a district is doing. First and foremost, I think looking at grade level summative of standardized test scores is one lens. So obviously MCAS from third all the way through, using that as a benchmark to evaluate curriculum, to evaluate teaching and learning, and to make strategic decisions on where the school needs to go to make sure that our students are successfully meeting grade level standards. There are a lot of different other means of assessment that are related to aligning social emotional learning. We've used a panorama survey, which is linked to the Castle framework for social emotional learning, and Scarborough, which has been a way to kind of measure where kids are along the social emotional learning lens. I think success of a school district also, you know, as a superintendent, being in schools and being present and being visible, and then also asking a lot of questions. We've done a yearly community dialogue as well as part of how we develop our strategic plan. But the metrics as far as student achievement, that's where you start, and then the formative assessments that are in place to really be able to get at multi-tiered system of supports for students. In Maine, it's called RTI. It's a similar idea. The formative assessments that you're using to make sure that kids are getting the individualized support that they need as well. All of those things collectively, I think, are critical. And then you have to have some form of measurement for how staff are doing, inclusive of, you know, staff morale and surveys that are also focused on where we are and where we want to go as a school community.
Great. Quick follow-up. Can you give us an example of something where you've seen some sort of adjustment that you've had to make due to one of those metrics in your current role?
So in Scarborough right now, we're looking very closely at our writing curriculum, and that's just based on results. In Maine, it's the MEAs. The challenge with the MEAs is that they've used different assessments each year, so it's very difficult to get kind of longitudinal data on that. But being able to identify kind of where the gaps may be and focus on aligning curriculum better based on how you're doing as a district. So we identified that as a weakness and have taken steps to address writing in the curriculum across content areas. And then it's in a similar vein in Falmouth. There was a lot of adoption of a new math curriculum at the middle school for a lot of the same reasons. You know, just really being able to dig into some of those results and looking at achievement results across time to identify, you know, areas that you need to improve and strengthen. Been super impressed with the curriculum team here in Danvers, both at the high school and middle school and elementary school levels. It is. Now, I remember this from Saugus, where you've got 5 elementary schools or 4 elementary schools all across with their own cultures and histories, and bringing them together to make sure that the curriculum is aligned across 5 different buildings is a challenge for sure, but super important, right? So that you're well aligned and the educational experiences are consistent, regardless of which building you're in.
Great. Thanks, Jeff.
Robin, you are next.
Yes, mine's kind of wordy. How do you keep your committee informed? In particular, what is your strategy around issues that are your responsibility, but where the school committee may have an interest, and what has been their response and feedback?
I've established just a routine weekly connect and standing meeting with it's Board of Education, so not school committee, a board in Scarborough, and did the same in Falmouth, where, you know, every week I've got that check-in, whether we need it or not, with the board chair. And really the ethic is around no surprises. So things that could impact, obviously, the board or the governance of the schools, and then vice versa too, things that the chair or other board members or other school committee members are hearing in the community. Just having that exchange of information and communication consistently is really key. I don't know if the school committee in Danvers has done this before, but doing a board level retreat too, along with superintendent and members of leadership, has been an effective mechanism too to do, you know, once a year, just to kind of set priorities and vision for the year and that kind of thing. I've found that to be super effective, and really just open lines of communication and transparency around, you know, things that come across my desk that are critical for the community, and just being open with that and having just that consistent ongoing communication and check-in.
Can you tell us
Really
a little bit
important.
about this yearly retreat?
Yeah,
What do you do? I mean, what do you do during it to help build that?
Well, we would do it right. Usually it was mid-August, and it was one day, and the morning was superintendent and the board alone, and then the afternoon was leadership team, so principals, as well as central office administrators, along with the board in the afternoon. and it was about setting up workshop time. So there was the meetings alternated between like a business meeting and then more of a workshop model where you can dig into issues that impact students. And so we would set the topics, the workshop topics for the year, talk a little bit about, like, it was usually a week or so after we've had a leadership team retreat, where we've discussed, okay, here are our goals for the year, here are the things we want to focus on as part of our strategic plan, and just basically set the table for how we were going to, some of the goals for that year for the school district K-12.
Thank you.
Any follow-up? No? All right, I am next. Excuse me. What role do you think that the public schools have in addressing the increasing mental health issues among our young people? And what ideas do you have to address those issues?
Well, it's central, and I was going to make the joke ahead of time that every COVID year should count as a dog year, like 7 years. So we should be like, those 2 years were just felt like 7, and I think that and even pre-pandemic, I think public schools have really, and educators, frankly, have been asked to do more and more, just in terms of the social emotional health of students at all ages. I think as a teacher, that kids come in and you have to get them into a space where they're ready to learn, and doing that is a challenge. And in particular, I would say in the last year or two, and if you've ever, if you've been in the classroom and talked with teachers, it's like getting back into the routine of being fully in person and full classrooms, all of those things, the kids have struggled, and you've got, second graders that had never had preschool or kindergarten experience or that kind of thing, at least fully in person. Beyond that, though, the schools really, in terms of the health issues that are and to what degree do you, where's the line between mental health and physical health and overall wellness, right? And I think that more and more schools are part of that response and need to work in partnership with families and with parents, to really strengthen the overall health of all of our kids, and you hear that, you hear that phrase a lot, it takes a village, but that's real and that's true. So I think, where it's really effective to address mental health issues, at least that play out in schools and at home, is the more that you can have effective partnerships with families and with parents, the healthier, I think, overall that our kids are going to be.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
Can you give us an example of some of those partnerships that you've built with parents or caregivers in your community?
So one of the things we did, and this was in 2016 in Falmouth, so it was a few years before, we did create an intercultural awareness and inclusion committee that was representative of a lot of, that was families, it was parents, it was students and our active civil rights groups in our buildings, as well as staff and administrators. And I bring that up because it was kind of very much of a grassroots thing and not a response to one specific incident on a national scale, but there were just some things as Falmouth was getting more diverse. We had some issues that didn't get out into the press, but were really concerning around mental health, but then also around how do we deal with, families that had moved in from different cultures and different backgrounds. And creating that group that could serve as almost an advisory group to the board and then also help inform us as educators gave a lot of parents, I think, a stake in where we were going as a community and as a school community, and it was powerful, and continues on through in the lead up, and then the response to the pandemic. That committee has been an important part of how we respond to some of the issues around diversity, equity, inclusion, and changes in what we want our kids to learn, and also making sure that all of our students feel like they have a connection to the classroom and to their schools.
Great, thank you.
All right, next up, Gabe.
Describe a time when you faced a diversity, equity, and inclusion issue at your school. What was that issue, and how did you address it?
This was actually right around the same time. It was pretty soon after we had this committee had formed. In 2016, we had a swastika that was carved into a table outside of the theater in the high school, and a student found it. And it's one of those things that's there's the immediate response, and then there's the because now it's not like a few kids heard about it and then in the age of everything else, you have pictures and then it's out and and then it's okay, how do we handle this? And having that committee in place, I think, really helped in the response. So there's the immediate response. It's trying to figure out who was responsible, and then also processing with kids in the community and with the staff. And so there's a lot of things that I think we were able to do right out of the gate quickly, to try and address the issue, and then also process it through some of the work of the committee, where there was a lot of high school kids who are on the committee as well. And so that was, I think we were successful in kind of framing it as an educational moment too, but it shook a lot of people for obvious reasons. And so there's that immediate response. There's obviously the removal of the symbol, but then there's the processing of confronting that it happened and that it was there, and communicating with the kids about it, and then having some of the kids on the civil rights group, and that was part of this committee, process it as well, and then also being open and transparent and just saying, here's what happened, so communicating that out immediately to the greater community was really important as well.
Thank you.
But these days, if you can't wait. I mean, your response has to be immediate and open and wide, because if you're not framing it, framing it or framing the solution or taking charge essentially of how you're going to respond, then other people will make those decisions for you, and it can spiral out of control quickly.
If I can just ask a follow-up, when something like that happens or other events happen, and sort of just in general, what do you think is your role in terms of the community, sort of as the front-facing representative of the school district?
Well, first and foremost, you got to own it, and you got to take responsibility. And a lot of times, this job is even if it's not your fault, you take responsibility, take blame, and give credit where it's due. And I think that works. It's effective leadership. It's taking ownership over something that you may not have control over, but ultimately, it's on you to kind of guide the response and to work with your team and to make sure that you're taking steps to address these kind of things. And when a core value of your organization has been threatened, then you got to respond.
Okay. Alice, you're up again.
Oh my goodness, that was fast, sorry. Okay. Tell us about a time you faced conflict within your district or a school. Take us through how you dealt with it and what you learned.
Ooh, back to 5. We had very, and again, we talk about like and it's hard to evaluate sometimes whether it's a really vocal minority and it's only a handful of people, or if it's actually larger than that. But Actually, a really funny story about that. So there was a group of parents who felt that we needed a plan to get everyone back fully in person. We'd been in hybrid for about half of the year, and all the metrics and everything else, just it made sense to continue, but there was just more and more increasing pressure of getting kids back into the classroom full time, which was not possible given all the social distancing restrictions and everything else in play. So, but that didn't stop people from really pushing and pushing and pushing, and there were letters that everybody was signing and moving around. This was when I was in Falmouth. And so there was just more and more pressure, and we had a board meeting that went until about 1 in the morning. I thought the whole town was going to speak at one point. I was on Zoom and everything. So it was there was a lot of things all of a sudden that it was like it just kind of exploded. And we got together as a team and put together what we thought was a reasonable plan to start getting kids back into school full time, and figure it was particularly challenging, I think, at the elementary school. And then so we had kind of a graduated plan where we would get the primary school kids back on a schedule that was close to full time by X date, and then do the same at the middle school and high school. So we'd put together a plan that we felt like was workable. And I just remember being at home. My daughter was a senior in high school, and all of her friends, I was in the kitchen, and they came in and they were like, "Mr. Bruno, we can't go back for 5 days. I have got a tea time every Monday morning now, and on Tuesday and on Wednesdays. And you can't mess with my schedule. I mean, this hybrid thing, it's working. And all these people, they don't know what they're talking about. And you can't. I'm a senior now. Like, you can't mess with my schedule. It was, I was like, all right, duly noted. If you want to come out to the board meeting tonight,
a much different
Connor, then you let me know.
what you were.
What's that?
I said a much different perspective than what you were receiving.
Exactly. Because, these kids, that's their senior year, and they have to be together. And, and if you ask the kids, even a few of them, they're like, no, you know what, we're good. But anyway, and again, the challenge of that was, I think, giving the time and space to listen, and then also to outline a plan that would be workable, and then essentially implement it and get the board to sign off on it. And in Maine, it's very much a local control state, so there's no overarching state saying this is when we're doing this, and you're kind of hung out to dry in some ways with some of the COVID stuff. So it wasn't as if the board couldn't make an alternate decision. So it's all those, controlling all the public pressures as a board or as a school committee, so that you're making, what's the best choice and best decision for your community and for your kids.
All right. Thank you. Josh, you are up, sir.
Great. Geoff, think about a specific time when you had to challenge the status quo to make change. What was the situation? What steps did you take in order to make that change?
Challenge the status quo. I feel like my first, I think, couple months in Scarborough, I had some really ultimately very productive meetings with some of the leadership of our teacher union. A couple of the first meetings were very challenging, and it was clear as far as how the union and the administrative team had the status quo of how they had been communicating was not healthy. So I reached out and then was also able to sit down and kind of meet one-on-one with the union president and just work out, some norms and some ground rules of how we should be communicating. And I think that was that was a different tact than she probably expected, and I think one that was ultimately, or has been ultimately, pretty effective. And pushing back that all right, if this is how you've been communicating with the previous superintendent or previous administration, this isn't really how I'd like to communicate. Let's try this, and I feel like the message got through, and we've been able to have a much more productive relationship, I think, between the leadership in town and the teacher union.
What was the nature of the type of communication? Where was it going wrong?
I think that there just wasn't any kind of open and honest communication, or even like set times where the team would meet one another, so that there was just a lot of misunderstandings and missed opportunities, to really get at where the teachers were feeling and how the teachers were feeling, and where the administration was going. And I think it was just I think a lack of leadership probably on the administrative side, more than anything else.
Good. Thank you.
If I can ask a follow-up that I think kind of fits in there. Excuse me. Looking at your resume, one of the things that stands out is that you led the Scarborough and Falmouth school districts to achieve distinction as two of the highest performing K-12 public school districts in Maine. How did that happen? What kind of changes did you implement, or was it just an atmospheric change? How do you think you got there?
We did some, it's funny, I came up to Maine and stole some things from Mass. I mean, we implemented some in Falmouth, like we started doing more measurable goals and SMART goal setting as an administrative team, which I'm sure anyone who's taught in Mass schools or been principals are, fully aware of the SMART goals. And, here's where we are. And, a lot of the teachers in Falmouth, super talented, driven, professional, very, very good, and for Maine standards, very well paid as well. And I mean, it's the district where you want to teach. And so starting with something that's already strong and making it stronger, but it really starts with building a strong team. I mean, with your school leadership and district-wide leadership, and then really strategically planning together and doing that collaboratively, so that everybody's interdependent, and then also engaging teachers and teacher leaders. So we had a learning, we had a group together that was union leadership, but also teacher leaders and administrators that would plan all of the professional development days. And then also set meaningful goals and targets for where our students, how our students were performing, and just really dig into the interdependence of team. So I was kind of steeped in the works of Dufour and others, where you're using common assessments to get teachers to really work together collaboratively to exchange best practice, and great ideas in the classroom really emanate and flow from teacher to teacher. So the more that they're involved in their own PD, and then also just taking their practice to the next level, it works with kids. And we got a lot of recognition along those lines with, blue ribbon school distinctions at all 3 levels. And Scarborough, too, I think there's just so many talented teachers that if you're able to find ways to have them meaningfully collaborate and use the time that they have, which is so precious, the PD time and everything else, which is, probably not enough of, but using that time effectively so that they're growing together and using one another as resources as well, is powerful, and it will drive the student experience for sure.
Thank you. Any follow-ups? Okay.
No, but this is a perfect segue, because the next question is, how would you hold educators at all levels accountable for delivering effective instruction?
Well, there are professional evaluation and growth system in place that, and you've got to implement with fidelity and work and encourage and making sure that the teachers have the resources that they need to be successful and the expectations, and that they have those opportunities for professional growth and collaboration. And you've got to implement the systems that you have in place. And that's always a challenge, but it's critical to meet the needs of kids. And there's certainly a well-established system to do that, and Massachusetts and in Danvers, and it's just implementing those systems that are there with fidelity and in ways that will give our teachers the support they need to grow as professionals.
All right, thank you.
Just a quick follow-up, if that's
Sure.
okay. How would you referenced it before about your leadership style, but how would you describe your leadership style?
I'm very much a collaborative, team-oriented. So the more that I've been in leadership positions, whether it was as a principal or now as superintendent, there are times where you just have to make decisions, whether it's in crisis situations or you have to be willing to act and to do what's right. But most of the most important decisions, people need to feel that the vision is shared and that it's not top down. There's it's participatory, it's encouraging teams, it's getting feedback, it's asking a lot of questions, listening, and making informed decisions, and making sure that people also have ownership over the decisions. So for example, when I was a middle school principal at Belmonte, one of the first things we did in the first year was put a committee together to completely revamp the schedule, because the schedule that was in place was not conducive to effective learning for kids, and it also wasn't using the staff that we did have efficiently, which we desperately needed to do. So we completely took over a full year, but completely turned the schedule and rolled out a new one over that time period. And those kind of fundamental systemic changes and cultural changes require leadership that's collaborative in nature and building capacity in others. And so I try as much as possible to make sure that those who I work with, I'm providing them what they need to grow in their own positions and with their own leadership. So definitely a facilitator, but willing to make the tough decisions when they need to be made.
Great, thank you.
All right, I'm next. This question is about budgeting and how you build a budget, how you advise your staff and school committee about budget priorities during challenging and perilous times.
That's right.
And also, again, I don't know, can you tell us a little about the process in Scarborough, for example, of putting a budget together?
It's very similar in terms of the schedule, and when you find out, for example, Chapter 70 money in January and Maine, it's a different form, but you find it about the same time what your state subsidy is going to be. We've always built a budget in transparency. I could say it more than 3 times, but I chose 3. It's super important in how you're building a budget. And starting with your leadership team. So our leadership team would start focusing on school level needs, and even whether it's programs or positions, that kind of thing. And you're doing that together as a K-12 team. So it's not individual conversations with building principals. You're really staying together as a district-wide leadership team and starting to build and share what your priorities are at the school level. And what that does is it really kind of and there's a lot of hard questions that start, and that's usually like late December into early January, where you start having those discussions as a leadership team. You're able to then kind of project what your level services budget is going to cost you into the next year, and then start prioritizing any new requests or things that will take the district or the school to the next level, whether it's a new position or whether it's a new program that people want to initiate, and have those discussions first as a leadership team, and then start connecting with the board and the finance committee. And then there's also, I was talking a little bit about this with town manager as well, having those early conversations with the town manager and other town departments early on, so you get a projection of some of the priorities of the other town departments. I think is so valuable for the superintendent to also work hand in hand and collaboratively with other town officials. And I mean, there's been so many times where we've gotten to help fund the town side to fund some things that our school department really needed, and then vice versa too, where we've been able to back off on some things that was a priority for a town and other departments. So it's all interrelated, and the more that you can work ahead of time with other departments in that early kind of like late fall. Well, actually, in Mass, everything's pushed a little earlier than it is in Maine, which is actually nice. But the earlier you can have those conversations, the better. And then bringing in the finance committee and having some significant time with the leadership team with our kind of proposed list of needs and the school committee early on in that process too. We did a half-day workshop model prior to going to like a full budget hearing. And then in Scarborough and in Falmouth, there's town council as well, so which is similar to the select board.
Thank you. Follow-ups?
So,
No?
I
Go
have
ahead,
one.
please.
So you talked us through the budget and decisions that are made. Is there a time when, well, like, I guess, how would you prioritize, like, especially right now in Massachusetts, special ed inflation right now has really gone up. So it doesn't have to be a special ed budget priority, but like
Yep.
when you've had to really prioritize something.
Yeah, and it's been very similar in Maine too, in particular dealing with the amount of special education referrals and people who are, being found eligible too. So our special education costs have gone increased significantly just in the last year or two. So, and that also, there's also a lot more that's gone into beefing up, tier 1 and tier 2 interventions, and looking at response to intervention or, multi-tiered system of supports as well. I think sometimes it's just we're too quick to try and identify a learning disability where there are other interventions that can be put in play in the classroom that can be effective as well. And that's a piece of it as well. But it's no question that's been a challenge for school districts and communities as part of the budget process. And then a lot of times, and I know this happened last year in Danvers too, where you can have a late unexpected expense that's really high, that's special education related that no one could have planned for. And anytime you have surprises like that as part of your budget process, that's a challenge.
Gabe, you are up, sir.
All right, final question. How would you manage staffing in the face of changing demographic needs, specifically enrollment decline at the high school and increasing enrollment in new classroom space at the elementary level? And if you can share any examples in your most recent experience, that would be great in regards to enrollment declines in any of your districts.
Yeah, it's, when you have it within the same or a similar phase, like if you have enrollment dips that are close in grade levels, right? and you can follow the bubble up through, but when you have a significant decline at the high school and then an increase at the elementary school, it's super challenging. And you try as much as possible to take advantage of, if you have declining enrollments, you always have a certain number of folks who retire or move on and that kind of thing. And so you try and sometimes you can just not fill those positions if it works. It's very challenging at the high school level because it's not like, everybody is very discipline specific, and you also need to have breadth as well as, so it just assessing classroom size doesn't work like it does at the elementary level. So just, a cut in any kind of a program at a high school, particularly where you're trying to build enrollment and build it back up again, as I'm sure is happening here in Danvers, it's a challenge because it's not always just it's not just the math of class sizes that's at stake when you're having to make those decisions. But there are definitely times where you have to make difficult budgetary decisions. I have not worked in a community where there was significant decline in enrollments. It's been pretty stable and steady, which has certainly been nice from a budgetary point of view. But there are times, obviously, where you need to make difficult decisions based on those numbers. But at the high school level, it's very difficult just to judge it by class size.
Follow-up?
I have a follow-up.
Yes, please.
I know you spoke that you didn't have specific experience with significant declines, but the steady decline, can you just talk us through a little bit on like what kind of projections you look at, what kind of, whether or not it's classroom size or just population size of the towns, but how would you make kind of future projections?
It's really hard to get past 2 or 3 years. And like we've used, NASDAQ before to do like long range 6-7 year out enrollment projections. In Maine, actually, we're right now we're in Scarborough contemplating getting to referendum for a new elementary school. And we have a consultant who's just finishing a long-term enrollment study for Scarborough now. The challenge, and we actually had one that was just before COVID broke. And the challenge with those long-term enrollment studies is that if you're off in the first year or two, the rest of the years are way off. And it's no longer meaningful. And that's what happened with the last enrollment study that was done in Scarborough was right before the pandemic. Everybody experienced that dip in enrollment from COVID, and Scarborough was definitely wasn't spared that. So the enrollment dipped considerably as a result of not having in-person schooling, and has bounced back, but threw off a lot of the enrollment projections that were there. So that can be the challenge, but there's definitely a lot of consultants who will do a longer term enrollment study, which can be pretty powerful. And trying to budget it, and talking with the, town manager a little bit, it seems like, the high school is definitely an exception with the technical school, but enrollment has been pretty relatively consistent in Danvers over many years. But those studies can get tough if you're off in the first couple of years. So we've done like our own internal kind of year to year, project out a year, project out 2 years. And then, like I said, this time around, I think we're hoping that the longer term enrollment study that we should be getting the data from, and that actually the next couple of weeks will help with that planning process for the new elementary school.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question. Given that our district is seeing enrollment decline at the high school, given the technical school and the various parochial high schools, et cetera, what are your initial thoughts or strategies in regards to try to mitigate some of that and draw more kids or keep more kids within our public schools?
Adam was sharing with me a little bit this morning some of the marketing materials and campaigns and just visits to the school, and I think that I think all of those things are just awesome, and the school pride of going to high school in your community, I think is huge, and so any ways that you can market that and have kids visit the schools and strengthen that strengthen what's in place for 8th graders and like a step up and being able to do more on that transition from 8th to 9th. We didn't talk a whole lot about some of the things that are already being done, but that is certainly an opportunity there to do some step-up stuff with the 8th grade kids coming up into the high school. And I think all of those things can pay off.
Any other follow-up? All right, with that, that is the last actual question. And so we'd like to allow you time to make a closing statement, any remarks, anything you want us to know, anything we didn't ask that you want to tell us?
I'm really appreciative of everybody's time today. Put in a lot of steps, but it was definitely all worth it. And I just wanted to particularly acknowledge Mary Wormers. She was just with me all day and just a fountain of just information, and what she's been doing this year in her role as interim is just nothing short of inspirational. So she is taking on so many different hats and does so obviously with such respect in class. So that was a really wonderful to spend time and pick her brain a little bit as well, and then also meet the administrative team. I just felt like through the whole day that this community could just be a great fit for me as an educational leader. It's been just an inspiring day. And I appreciate all the thoughtful questions that you put together as a school committee, and this whole process from the opening round interviews to today. It's just it's been great, and I've just really appreciated everybody's thoughtful and direct answers to my questions, and just the passion that I see in people about the schools here has been inspiring for me, just as an educator. So I feel like there are definitely some connections to I think what I've been able to do up in Maine and Falmouth and in Scarborough, and how I lead, and I would hope that it would be a good fit for this community, and I look forward to the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Geoff.
All right, so that's it. What we're going to do is take a recess, and I expect this recess will be 30 to 45 minutes so that we can, get our thoughts together individually and consider what we want to say now that we've had the chance to talk to all 3 candidates. So with that, Geoff, we're going to let you go. Thank you for coming down.
Thank you.
And end of a long day.
There we go.
And, we're, again, appreciate everybody's thoughtful questions in this process. Thank you to members in the audience. Anyone who wants to hang around, you certainly can, but we'll probably be a little while this time. So with that, we will be in recess.
Thank you.
Gabe, and we will just talk about your impressions of all three candidates. If you had the opportunity, if you were one of the people checking references or you've checked references, chat a little bit about, how that went. Again, you don't have to mention particular names of who you talked to, but a general summary of what you found. And you are allowed to state your preference among the candidates, too. So feel free. So why don't we start with you, Robin?
Okay, so I'm just going to go in alphabetical order, because that's how my thing is organized. So I'll start with Dan Bauer. I had the opportunity to be part of the initial interview, and then obviously the one in front of the public. And although I wasn't, I did check in with people in the educational field, and I have not heard one negative thing about him. I've heard that he's, is able to have difficult conversations with anyone, regardless of how well he knows that person or doesn't. Great at building relationships, great at collaboration, would really be able to come and, I guess, I'd say heal Danvers. And I really think that although we want to push education and academics in Danvers, we really can't do that unless we have relationships first. We always say that with the kids and teachers too. So that really made me feel really good. And I received great feedback from just the staff and actually community members too about him. So that I'll leave that. I can't say anything about what was in the initial interview, so I can't say anything about that.
Fine.
So as far as Geoff Bruno, again, people that had former worked with him had not said anything negative about him. I guess he was great with special education. He obviously has the background as far as a superintendent, really knows curriculum well. I think that he really did a great job out talking about staff morale as a way to measure metrics of a district. And the last person I will talk, we can always go back and forth, right?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you're catching me off guard going first.
I'm sorry. Well, I have faith in you, even if it is a little perilous.
So the last candidate is Peter Cushing, and I think that he definitely did a lot of research about Danvers, which I thought was great. I think that he knows curriculum. He has experience as a assistant superintendent in Medford. He talks about, being actively anti-racist, about being transparent to the point of criminality. However, if I were to say right at this moment, because you want to know who I would say right now, right?
You can.
Okay. I right now would be leaning toward Dan Bauer, because I think that right now we need someone who is going to reestablish trust in the community. But I'm interested in everyone else's thoughts and feedback and reference checking.
Your turn, Alice.
All right. Well, I think along with Robin, I had the opportunity to meet these candidates in a previous interview. So I do have that experience as well. And I think I first started with what I was looking for superintendent, and what was clear with the 11, how many interviews did we have? 12, 11?
No, we had 7.
7, was Danvers is in a good place. We are very much admired by other districts in the state in terms of what we already have placed, curriculum-wise, D&E-wise, SEL. I think that we have to give ourselves credit as a district. So, I'm not necessarily looking for a candidate to come in and change the establishment internally at central office or at the school. So I do believe that we are in a good place. So that's kind of going into my thoughts as I was looking at all the candidates. For me, leadership, cultural fit, and then vision was something that I was really looking for in the candidates that we have met with over the last couple of nights. you know, the greatest opportunity, I think, in our district is someone who can come in and be a leader. So, you know, I think from what we went through, it's clear to me, based on even some of the feedback that we received from the community, that, and I think Dan really exemplified the leadership skills that we're looking for the next superintendent. In terms of cultural fit, it's interesting, like, you know, who can fit in currently and what we're going to be like in the future, I'm having a struggle with in terms of, you know, who would fit in now and then where we want to be tomorrow. So that is kind of something that's kind of in the back of my head that I don't have an answer for. I think, you know, looking for someone who's authentic, someone who can build community was really important to me. And I think, you know, both, because I think there's a real opportunity, you know, those people that know me, I think when it struck a chord when he talked about social media and cell phones. So I really appreciated him acknowledging that in terms of our children in the district. So I did appreciate him speaking about that. Geoff Bruno tonight, I'm very impressed by him. He to me feels like he can take the job and just start on Monday morning type of thing, right? So I think that is, to me, you know, something that I'm thinking about as well, like what that learning curve will look like. So I don't have a preference right now, so I'm eager to hear everyone else's feedback and thoughts too.
Can I just also, just so I know that the community only saw the interviews, we're also going back with, I mean, Alice and I had a little bit more time as far as we had initial interviews, but also just talking to community members at all, you know, all stakeholders in the community who are able to meet each of the candidates. So it isn't just based on these like one interviews. I just wanted to clarify, and obviously reference checking.
Josh, your turn, sir.
Great. So I do think that that's a good point, Robin. So we all saw these candidates in different lenses, right? So there was initial screening. I visited with all of them during their community interaction, or just the regular panel interviews, and I conducted interviews for Dan Bauer. So I just wanted to share what some of the findings were on Dan. Just to kind of summarize this, a lot of the common themes that I did get a hold of was relationship building, collaboration. These were common themes. He was visible. A lot of people said that he was at every sort of event that had happened in the community, from sports to drama, and seemed to be kind of tireless, like the guy doesn't sleep. But leadership was another common theme that came out of it, and talked about his collaboration style of leadership, and also building culture, right, which I think is big for Danvers right now, because I've heard it in the interviews, they were calling it either a branding issue or a perception issue, whatever it was, but that was one of the things that came out loud and clear from his current supervisor, his current superintendent, as well as former principal that he was the assistant principal under. So I think there was a lot of that. He's also kind of a bit of a whiz on social media, which I think is also something that we're trying to do here as well. I do think that there is some other great things that came out of this. Some quotes that came out of this was, Danvers needs Dan right now, which I thought was good. And that was in relation to the current branding and perception issue that we have. And also, when I dig into these references, I did 4 thorough references, and those are the common themes that actually came out of all 4. But one of the quotes that came out was, Dan's a treasure for any community that scoops him up. And also, I was just overall impressed with it. Obviously, when somebody gives references, you have kind of a feeling that they're going to be pretty positive, right? We'd be shocked if something came out very negative, but just seeing that, I thought they were very strong references, and I really dug into these a little bit. When I try to do fair balance on these, I try to find something that what's an area for that they can improve on, or where will Dan struggle to come in if he is the candidate of choice? And it was basically he doesn't know what he doesn't know at this point. He's currently a high school principal at Marblehead High School. He's never done a district-wide budget. So these are the types of things that would anybody, and it would be a stretched position for him, but I don't necessarily think that's something that disqualifies him. So overall, the references are very good. I hope I'm not rambling too much, so I wanted to hit that
That's
first.
helpful.
All right, good.
Thank you.
So when I look at what I'm looking for in a candidate from my perspective, here, I think leadership is always is big. I do think that we do need some change here. I think there's a lot of good things that are going on here, but given the most recent, several years that we've had some issues, I think we need somebody that will come in and be that leader and not shy away from change and challenge that status quo. That's where a lot of the questions that I was asking during the interview were. So just kind of go through in alphabetical, I thought Dan did a very good job with that. I think it came across, he had a presence, a leader. I saw that just from the interactions with the community that he had. I think a lot of relationships, his stressing of starting with the elementary school and kind of citing data that said that strong performance in elementary schools is kind of an indicator that that students are going to continue to succeed at the middle school and high school level, and then so on and so forth. So that's kind of a quick thing for Dan. Also visibility and social media, I think would be key for this. But overall, just a leader in the community. I think that was my sense that I took away from Dan. Going next in alphabetical order is Geoff, who we met with tonight. And I thought Geoff would also be someone that possesses really good leadership skills. I think he's a candidate that could hit the ground running. He's currently the only superintendent that we interviewed, right? So he would be able to take his experience currently up in Maine and hit the ground running here as well, just if he is the candidate of choice as a superintendent. Mm-hmm. I thought he had some really good answers as far as just a lot of things we dug into a little bit more in some follow-up questions, and I thought he had some really strong answers on that as well. So overall, very, very positive with Geoff as well. And then finishing up with Dr. Cushing, I thought Dr. Cushing did a great job as well. Again, assistant superintendent in a large school in Medford, and I think it has a proven track record as well, and another candidate that can hit the ground running. I thought his talking about different metrics that he would use and his specific plans were also very strong. Focus on special ed. I thought, I'm trying to summarize a lot of these. It's kind of hard not to ramble a little bit, but again, another strong candidate on that one. I don't necessarily want to share who my number one, number two, number three are right now, but I think just to give a quick summary on just Dan's references as well as just overall impressions of the three candidates overall.
All right, Gabe.
Hey there. First, I want to say this has been quite the experience. I think we have three really excellent candidates. I can't thank the committee, Robin, Alice, and Dorothy for the incredible work, and all the other folks who participated in the process. It's been quite enlightening. The way that I approached this, and myself, Josh, and Eric split up the candidates. So my main focus of research was on Dr. Cushing. Did extensive, checks on his references and collected that. So in how I'm going to share my information, I'm just going to share the references that I collected on Dr. Peter Cushing, and then I'll talk about the candidates individually in that way. I didn't expect to get anything negative on any of the candidates from their references, or else that would have been pretty interesting. But going back into Dr. Cushing's oldest references, and it gets pretty consistent across the board. One example from Ashburnham was that, Dr. Cushing's a motivator. He has urban and rural experience. He's a whole school builder. He builds communities. He has genuine care and passion for children and the staff. Another reference, Ed Peter is a doer. He's a great organizational guy. He's upfront. He's a good political player, great listener at all levels. Most recent reference from Medford, called him a collaborative partner. His commitment in interactions with staff and students are top-notch. He's a change maker. He gets everyone involved. So the themes around all of the references for Dr. Cushing were really about his enthusiasm, his experience, his love for the kids, his operational experience, and the way that he manages himself in regards to town politics, and his ease in going in and out of the buildings, and his visibility and presence. for me, I mean, going into it and going and having those types of references when I think about, Danvers and why I joined the school committee, when I think about, the leadership that I wanted within the top of the district and how I wanted that to flow with community building, really, really resonated with me. I found Dr. Cushing's interview to be just excellent across the board. I thought he answered every question. He had a lot of detail for every single thing that we asked for. But then I also reflect on, having someone of the presence of Mary Warner's, who I think is doing an excellent job within Danvers and where we are today. And I've said this in school committee meetings, I think our town has a little bit of a negative bias within the town. Like, there's a lot of good things happening at Danvers. So who's the guy who can come in and really amplify that and get it going? And that's how I got my head around, the type of candidate and who do we want in this district. So that just kind of gives you a little look into my frame of mind. Dr. Cushing seems to be an incredible change maker. Would he be too much for Danvers? Not really sure. I'm not sure if we need that much change, but is he an incredibly capable person that any district would be lucky to have? I mean, absolutely. And I'll stop there with Dr. Cushing. Dan Bauer, an absolutely impressive individual. I did not check Dan Bauer's references, but I didn't have to. Just the influx of unsolicited references, the local support, friends of friends, everyone somewhere somehow seems to know Dan Bauer. Meeting him in the community meeting, his immediate presence, his ability to interact with every single person in the room without much effort, was incredibly impressive to me. I know of all three candidates, he probably has the least experience in regards to being an administrator, but it's not something that I'm necessarily concerned with, given the resources and the quality of educators and the administration that we currently have within Danvers. He's also someone that I see that could be that community builder, someone who can take the good that we have and bring it out forth into the community. It's just something that seems natural, and he just kind of oozes that confidence, and I feel like this is someone that the community can put their arms around. And I'll stop there with Dan Bauer. What do I say about Bruno? Geoff Bruno, just a solid guy. He has the experience from day one, as everyone else has mentioned. I really love his demeanor, his cool confidence, love his sense of humor. I mean, he absolutely has all of the experience and all the qualifications that we would absolutely want and be comfortable with as him being the superintendent within Danvers. I absolutely have no issues with him if he were to take the job and start tonight. So, I mean, I can't add anything else to that. Again, I think we have three very, very, very capable candidates. And so when it comes down to my decision, for me, it becomes the overarching community teacher feedback person who can come in from day one, and I think everyone will put their arms around and rally around. And when I think about who that person could be, I'm going to say my number one guy right now is Dan Bauer.
All right, thank you all. So I think my impressions are not necessarily very different from everybody else's. I will go alphabetically. It seems to be the choice here.
I didn't go alphabetically.
Dan, yeah. With Dan Bauer comes sort of highly recommended for his people skills and abilities to forge relationships. And he left me with the impression that he's a doer. He comes up with ideas and gets them done by building teams and people working together. Really, I suspect a straight shooter who's going to tell people, how he thinks things are, but I mean that in a good way. He'll be transparent and honest and direct, and he knows the North Shore, certainly, and I think that Because of that, he brings to the district, he would bring to the district a certain amount of confidence from folks who've been here for a while. He's a known quantity and very well thought of in Marblehead, no question. You can't help but sort of appreciate what he brings to the table. Geoff, Bruno, I had the chance to check with some people who knew him and have worked with him, and he comes across from those people as someone who is a great team builder, very collaborative, and the kind of guy who takes accountability if something doesn't work and spreads the credit around when it does. Someone described him as a detail-oriented person, but also a visionary. His resume is most impressive in the sense that if you go through his experience, before he's the superintendent, he has experience at every level from elementary through middle school on up, and has a proven track record as superintendent in 2 districts. So, and beyond that, he also came to a superintendency as an executive director of curriculum and instruction. And that was one of the things I think people were looking for when we put our profile together. So his resume fits pretty much everything we were looking for. Peter Cushing, very enthusiastic. I thought his level of preparation for the interview was really strong. And some say, well, that doesn't mean he'd be a great superintendent. But the fact is, it showed a level of interest, homework, detail, and really trying to understand the challenges that the district face. So bottom line, I think we have 3 excellent candidates. Personally, I'm persuaded that the experience is the difference for me, and so I would support Geoff Bruno, but honestly, I think we've got 3 very excellent candidates.
Can I
So now, yeah, please.
also share something
Absolutely,
that I forgot too? Because
Yep.
Dorothy, I might need to ask, we got the entry plan. Can we share anything that we were, okay, that's public? Okay. So one thing I just want to make note of is that we did get it, and this is a really, and maybe in the education world, this is why I feel like it's so important to put my hat on as far as that goes, but also as a school committee member, we got a very detailed superintendent entry plan from Mr. Bauer, months, like different phases and kind of, what he would be doing the first 100 days. And one thing that I really appreciated about was really like the guiding questions. And it really started first out with like, all the stakeholders that he's going to be meeting with would be, tell me about your background. Like, how do I get, tell me who you are. And I really like that personal connection that he would be starting with. And then also, when he's asking questions about recent history of the school system, or are we headed in the right direction, or what are the school system's core strengths? How do you know? And I mean, there's other guiding questions too, but this was the first, well, actually the only one where we got this really detailed plan, which showed me that, he's really thinking I'm coming in August, I'm, or starting the conversation as early as August, or maybe even as early as July, I need to meet with all these people and in these phases, and it's really thought out. And I just really appreciated that. So.
Other comments for the committee, from the committee?
We received over 100 pieces. I think it's important for everyone to know we received over 100 pieces of feedback from teachers, employees, family members who attended the community meet and greets, et cetera. So we have all, and are currently, I could see, scrolling through all of that. So I just want everyone to know that as well, that, we are taking that into consideration.
It wasn't closed until after the last interview, so everyone, there was time for everyone to go on.
Anyone else?
I mean, again, three incredible candidates, but when I consider upside, that's kind of how I landed on my number 1 in regards to who potentially would maybe one of the most sought after candidates.
in future openings. That's kind of where I'm
mean-
there, but all of them are really incredible individuals.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ready to vote yet, so I'd like to at least continue this conversation as I think I'm sitting here thinking who wants the job the most, and again, I know we were all impressed by how prepared Peter was. There could be a question of, did that come off as too rehearsed? Was there any authenticity to how much he wants to work for us and with us? So I keep going back to that. So, it's something for us as a committee to think about, like, who do you think really wants to work in Danvers, not just because we posted a job opening, but, someone who is actually trying to seek us out to make a change or to partner with us to really take our district to that next level. I don't have an answer to that. I'm just,
No.
I think for us to think that through a little bit as well.
I mean, I don't know where else Geoff Bruno applied, but I mean, it is public that Peter Cushing applied to many districts in all over Mass. I know that Dan Bauer did say, and I haven't heard elsewhere, differently, that he did only apply to Danvers.
All right, other comments, thoughts, further discussion?
We did receive feedback, I think, there was quite a bit of feedback about some of the candidates lacking future vision and strategic vision. And, I kept thinking about that as well. We gave them sort of like a limited time with each group and each team. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because I would hope, similar to what Robin shared, that, Dan Bauer had a plan in place that, any candidate would come in and work with us and listen to central office, work with Adam and Mary, and kind of listen before we kind of hear what their vision is. So I did want to address that, because I felt like that was coming through a bit in some of the feedback that was provided.
I just want to say, from a professional perspective, we do focus on the individuals and the qualities we're looking for, and just keep it at that. Like, I don't want to make comparisons between candidates. I think they're all incredible.
Yeah, agreed.
And really, let's just focus on specifically what we're looking for, because I could literally walk away with any one of them
Yeah.
being our superintendent.
Right. The other point I'd like to just make is we polled the community to find out what everybody was looking for, and what came to the top was they were looking for somebody that was more visible, a strong leader. So when I started to look at the different candidates, and I'm still currently looking at with the pile of paper on the computer in front of me, is I try to identify behaviors and characteristics that would meet that, but also, I'm aligned to a lot of the things that the community is looking for as well. So I think there's a lot that went into this, and continues to go into this ongoing discussion about who we're going to look for.
I don't think we can dismiss the community
Yeah.
input. That is overwhelming.
I feel like, that's the thing, Gabe. I feel like my decision, it's also just based on what we created as a description, but also like the feedback, because we represent the community of Danvers. So it's, we're not voting on our personal preferences, but what the community needs.
To an extent.
No. Personal preferences?
No. I mean, like,
what the
in community,
community needs.
the
Yeah,
community
yeah,
is one
yeah.
component of this, plus the entire process that you folks have put in place.
Oh, right, but
Yeah,
I'm
like,
saying
that's
the
one
community
part
at
of it.
large. Yeah. Yeah.
Other comments?
Can we hire all three?
Not according to the budget, no. Nope.
No, I mean, it's nice,
Good problem.
it's a good problem to have, that we have three people, any of whom we feel could do this job and do it well. It's a question of each of us, based on what we have seen, who we think is the right candidate this point in time. And we can certainly, not shutting down discussion, keep talking if you want to make a pitch for your candidate or one candidate, or, either that, or we move to a motion if someone makes a motion. That's where we're at. This is why they voted us in.
Yeah, no, I think like my big thing and just hearing from the community, all along in the last year, even before we started the survey of what do we want in a superintendent, was that the community wanted someone that was going to rebuild relationships. And I think that, that was the main piece that came out of that. And I think until relationships are rebuilt, you cannot move the district any more forward. So
That's a good point.
I mean, we talk about all the time, like the kids can't learn if they don't have a relationship with the teachers. Well, the teachers can't work to their best ability if they don't have the proper leadership and collaboration and support and relationships with their leaders. So.
Yeah, I think, I'll say from what I saw, I think Geoff Bruno has that same ability to build relationships. I don't know, and again, I like them all. This is just, it comes down to what your gut tells you about who's right. Again, keep talking.
I mean, I think any of these candidates does feel like a different direction for our district as well, which I think perhaps is something that is good and that we need. I mean, from my point of view, it is. So I think, again, in not helping and picking one versus another, but I do think, as we think back to where we were, to where we want to be, I do feel like they each are going to offer different blends of direction that might have been in previously.
Okay, so what is your pleasure? Anyone going to make a motion? Do you want another recess? What would you like to do?
So I will make a motion to appoint, or would be offer or appoint? Offer?
It's actually a motion relative, I would say, is there a motion relative to the election of a superintendent?
Okay, so is there a motion relative to the election of a
No,
superintendent?
that,
Oh,
That's
that's what I start with, my motion. Okay, so
here's
I would
my
like to make a
suggestion.
motion.
Your motion should be to offer
Throw me
the
off guard.
superintendency to a particular person of your
Okay.
choice, subject to a successful contract negotiation.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to offer Dan Bauer, Superintendent of Danvers Public Schools, with the appropriate negotiation of salary and whatnot, and contract.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. So does anybody object to a roll call vote?
Nope. No.
All right, so I'm going to call the roll, starting with Robin.
Here.
Alice.
here.
I'm sorry, was that a yes?
Oh, no.
Oh, I said
Is
here,
it a roll
yes.
call? Oh, she says yes. I'm going to abstain from this right now.
Okay. Josh.
Yes.
I'm sorry, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And Gabe.
Yes.
All right. So we have 3 yes votes. We have 1 abstention. I haven't voted. Given that we have 3 and Dan would therefore be the person, I am going to join in voting yes. I think it's very important that he start out with the full support of the board. He is the choice of the majority of this board, and we all need to support him. So, and I think he'll do a great job going into this, as I say, going into this vote. I think we had 3 great candidates, and I had confidence that Dan will do a terrific job for us. I had confidence that Geoff and Peter would too. So I'm very content to vote yes for Dan Bauer. And Alice, any idea to take your abstention back?
I will take my abstention back, and I will vote yes. I was hoping for further discussion, but I am 100% in support of Dan.
All right, so Dan Bauer is the choice of this committee. And I understand that Dorothy Presser will give him a call. It's all subject, of course, to, say, a successful contract
Correct.
negotiation. I would be inclined to appoint a subcommittee for the purpose of negotiating that contract. And I'm going to appoint myself to that committee, and then one other person. Who is the most interested? Who wants to fight for this job? Josh.
Yes.
Josh
Okay.
does.
Yeah, I'd like-
Is everyone content with Josh and I
That
doing
is
this?
fine.
Yes.
All right, if that's the case, Josh and I will handle the negotiations.
So what would be the expected time that we would like know if we secured the contract?
I'm hoping to do it sooner rather than later.
Not
meaning-
months, like
Oh,
a couple of weeks.
not even that.
Oh, okay.
I hope that we can
Immediate.
get this done very quickly.
Okay.
All right, so let me, we have a little bit of business to do before we go. But before we move on from this, I want to thank all of the candidates for their interest in Danvers and the fine job they did presenting their skills and strengths and their interest in Danvers. We were very lucky to have such a qualified group of candidates. I want to thank Robin and Alice for running a really fine process that led us to these two candidates. You two did a marvelous job, and it is most appreciated. Geoff, Gabe, thank you for the thoughtful questions and the thoughtful deliberations tonight. I think we've got a good superintendent who's going to do great things for this district. Mary and the central office team, Adam, and Pam, and everyone who, Janet, I don't want to leave you out, everyone who worked so hard to lead our candidates through the district, introduce them to the district, the staff members who took the time to speak with them and introduce them to the district. Can't thank you enough. You have all made this process, I think, a very successful one. And so with that, that concludes the superintendent.
Josh has something. Hold on.
I'm sorry, what? Oh, Dorothy?
Would you like to know that he accepted?
He accepted.
He accepted.
Yeah, there you
Okay.
go. It was a quick phone call.
Wow, there you
She's
go.
on it.
Wow, that was live. It was
Thank
live.
you.
So we will be in touch directly to talk contract.
it live.
Dorothy, I'm glad you're here too. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
all you've done to work with Robin and Alice and help this. I know you want to go out and call the other candidates. I get that. But thank you very much. We appreciate it. All right, so we have two more items. One, we have an out-of-state field trip, and is there a fundraising request also, Mary, or just an out-of-state field trip?
I think there are 3 out of state.
3 out-of-state field trips, okay.
Okay.
Can I
So
go?
we're presenting it as the consent calendar, which we typically do. Can I have a motion to accept the consent calendar?
Motion to accept.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second, any discussion?
Can I go?
Hearing none, all right. All in favor of accepting a consent calendar?
Aye.
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 We also have to pick a date for our January meeting. Before we do that, I did want to remind people of the Martin Luther King event, which is going to be in the atrium here at 4 o'clock on Monday, the 16th. Paul Pollock is from the Inclusion Committee is out there. Give me the thumbs up so I get the time right. And Dee, I didn't see. Hi, Dee. Dee Joko, who's the chairman. I know it's going to be a wonderful event. It is always a wonderful event. And so we look forward to having you here. And I hope all of my colleagues can make it. It's a wonderful afternoon. So thank you. And all right, so now picking a date for our regular January meeting.
And it does not have to be a Monday, right, if it works
It
out
does,
that way?
at this point,
Okay.
I just want to fit it into
Okay.
January. Yeah. Because I know, Gabe, you're away for a couple weeks or a week.
I'm just looking at my work
Yeah,
calendar. so
ditto.
I'm not texting, just.
Mary promises this one will be short, not 4 hours, right?
What day are we looking for?
We don't have one. So, I mean, obviously, next week it's a short week, and the 16th, we wouldn't meet.
Yeah, I mean, we can, if we do it the week of the 23rd, we'll probably move our, all right, so our February meeting would be the 13th of February. So that'd be about 2 weeks, give or take.
How about Wednesday, the 18th? Does that work? Wednesday, January 18th.
That's fine for me.
I'm sorry, what date did you say?
Wednesday, January 18th.
January 18th.
Do I have a
You
second?
know, you picked the one day that, that I can't. I've got to
Eric,
be
you're
in.
always free.
I know, but I've got to be in Rhode Island on the
Okay.
18th. I'm sorry.
How about the 19th?
Yes, I could do the 19th.
I could do the 19th.
Yeah,
Everyone good?
okay.
Thank you. I appreciate you allowing that to happen.
Mary, that works for you? Yeah, okay.
The 19th.
All right. Is there any further business to come before the committee?
So it's Thursday, the 19th.
All right, hearing none, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Go for it, Josh.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion.
Oh, wait,
I'm
what,
sorry,
what,
Dave.
what?
Pardon me.
I can't do the 19th.
Can you do it virtual if it's hybrid?
I
I
can't.
don't think we're allowed
I
to
don't
do
think,
that.
No,
I don't think we can do that anymore.
I think we can. Dorothy said you can.
Well, can you do it with one missing?
Yeah, you need a quorum. So could you do, he can't do the 19th, could we do it without him?
We can, sure.
I mean, are you okay with that?
Could also do another Friday night meeting. Those are fun.
No, please.
How about Tuesday, the 17th? That's a
That's a joke.
potential.
The 17th, Tuesday?
1 second.
That works for me.
Nope.
Nope.
Eek.
The 18th was my day.
All right, how about Monday, the 20, well, I've got a Monday, the 23rd.
I cannot do the 23rd or the 24th.
Wednesday, the
25th?
25th.
How about the 25th?
I'm sorry.
The spelling bee.
It's the spelling bee.
Oh,
So that's a
okay.
no.
How about the 26th?
What day is that?
Thursday.
Okay, so it seems like someone's going to have to miss one of them, so I guess we just decide what day. It seems like January's a little packed.
I'm okay missing the 19th, and then we can just rotate.
I mean, is there anything, Mary, that's like gonna be so pressing that, on the, you know what I mean, like the January that,
Program of studies, the high school.
this is the first reading though, so we
First
don't,
reading,
yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Yep.
So, I mean, can Gabe always like send questions he has had, yeah,
Yeah,
So-
just send it in advance.
okay.
So are we sticking with the 18th? No, I'm sorry,
The
19th?
19th, yeah.
All right.
Where is it?
Like I say, Gabe, maybe we can move you in virtually. That is allowable now with the, if you want, we can do that.
Yeah.
What's that?
We can move you virtually. I don't know if you have meetings, but
No.
it's okay.
No,
That's
it won't
just
work.
as an option.
All right. So we have a motion and a second to adjourn. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? No? Thank you all again for all the hard work on this.